If you need the best sleeves to protect your best decks, check out Sentry Sleeves using the link below. A pack of sleeves starts at only $10, and a portion of the proceeds goes to supporting local animal shelters. Use code EBAM5 to save 5% at checkout.
Hello, everyone. That is Austin, and I am Titus, and this is Everyone is Bad at Magic, where we untap, upkeep, and punt. Today, we will be talking about the Secrets of Strixhaven, new mechanics, and maybe make them a little bit less secret in how they engage or interact with the rules. Also, take care of some of the housekeeping. There is a CDH event in the Colorado local area, the Siege, which will be taking place in June. That will be taking place in, as many people keep saying, a castle. So if you're a CDH player and this is going to be a large event, come join us. It'll be a fun time. So we're going to move into our Punter's Confessional. I don't believe we have too much within this. I know that last weekend, the thing that I can say is when you're doing your mulligans, and this probably will be a theme for me, actually evaluate your hand.
Mhm.
And the reason why I say that is even though it was really bad, I could have kept a 3 with a Sylvan Library and a Simian Spirit Guide. I would have to hope to top deck a land to be able to cast the Sylvan Library, but I think the payoff would have been relatively worth it. You know, we're pretty much down and out. I went to a 2, was able to top deck a land to cast the Ragavan I kept. So, Austin, I believe that you have something to share with us too.
I personally don't have a punt confessional because I still haven't played Magic in weeks, unfortunately. However, from our time video, we had a user submitted punt confessional by Savage Streamin 1031. And they said, I was so zoned on my plans in my first and recent tournament, I used a Hazel's Broodmaster to exile a Kiki Jiki to stop a reanimate line on the table, and I was so focused on the zealous conscripts that was also in the graveyard, I forgot Hazel's makes it food on entering, and I could have just made infinite squirrels and ran the table over with food. Instead, I used it to copy a Thunder Trap trainer a few times and try to tutor a devoted druid. I lost. All I can say to that is when you're in the heat of the moment, it happens to the best of us. You get tunnel vision. It happens to everyone.
100%.
Yeah, I've done that so many times.
It's always too like you're playing a game and then somebody's looking over your shoulder and they're like,
Hmm.
why don't you see that's over there and available to you?
Or like a judge walks by and like it's your first tournament and you probably don't know better and well, you may not know better. I'm sorry, and you get nervous that you're going to mess something up and get a warning or something.
Yeah,
It happens.
hindsight's 2020, right?
Oh yeah.
Especially that's why I think it's very important to calm down,
Hmm.
like and evaluate everything going on the board. Especially like if you're playing with friends, you can get distracted by the banter. But when you're in the competitive, sometimes there's like, hey, make game actions. And
Hmm.
there can be a lot of pressure there, especially when you want to make the right decision. And sometimes you just got to take a look and evaluate the table and see what else is going on. The other thing is too, our mistakes make us better.
Hmm.
Once you start to see there's other lines available, you can start to have those conversations in your head and say, oh, is there something that I may be missing that's going on right now? So
Hmm.
yeah, very familiar. And thank you for sharing. So, Austin, we're talking about some of the new mechanics in Secrets of Strixhaven. What is in Magic the definition of a mechanic?
Anything in the game of Magic that makes it function is technically speaking a mechanic. Mechanics of Magic are the things that make the game function. It is just everything in the rules. How a card tap it is an ability, that is just a mechanic. A keyword is a single word that encapsulates an overarching rule or ability that doesn't change. A good example of a keyword would be trample. That single word is going to be placed on a card with very few times of reminder text nowadays that tells you access damage is dealt through the creature to the defending player. Stuff like Metalcraft should be a keyword, but it's not. And things in Secrets of Strixhaven like Opus are just mechanics with a fancy name. It is usually often denoted by the word or phrase in italics, hyphen, and then the actual definition. I do believe the reason why Metalcraft hasn't been made a keyword is because it has nuances. The only defining characteristic of Metalcraft is you control 3 or more artifacts. Everything else changes.
And what would be the difference between that and like Opus? Because it's whenever you cast a spell 5 or greater, or an instant sorcery spell 5 or greater, that you get the better effect.
The better effect is changing. Just like Metalcraft, there is the same restriction or trigger. The effect of that is changing. Trample, it's going to be the same no matter what. First
Okay,
strike, the same no matter what. In the Secrets of Strixhaven, Paradigm is going to be the same no matter what.
right. Versus some of the other abilities
Mhm.
will have different effects going on.
Opus is a lot like Magecraft, except it doesn't trigger on copies. Magecraft, I believe, was first introduced in the first Strixhaven, but they are both just mechanics that trigger off of something or trigger because of something, and then always have a different effect depending on the card.
We're going to discuss on how some of these function. Some of them might be more simple, some of them might be more complicated. And actually, touching on one of the more complicated ones is going to be Paradigm.
Also, if any question you have after this, feel free to comment.
Yes. Austin, could you go over what Paradigm does?
Oh boy. Uh, Paradigm reads in the rules text, because I find it a little bit easier to digest than the reminder text on the card. It represents two different abilities. The first being a delayed trigger, and the second exiling the spell. Note, exiling the spell happens first. It is not required for the rest of the ability to take effect. The delayed trigger is if this is the first time a spell you control with that spell's name has resolved this game, at the beginning of each of your pre-combat main phases for the rest of the game, create a copy of that object in exile. You then may cast that copy without paying its mana cost.
So it's a trigger that takes place at the beginning of each of your first main phases once the spell successfully resolves.
Yes. The reason it's a triggered ability is it reads at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, do X.
Okay. So every subsequent like main phase, you will get a trigger that happens that allows you to cast a copy of this spell.
It allow you to create a copy in exile, and then you may cast that copy. It has to be at that point in time after you cast that, or after you create that copy in exile, though. This is relevant for cards like Drannith Magistrate, Lavinia, the Orzhov one. I don't remember her title off the top of my head. Where if your opponents can only cast spells from their hand, not from exile.
Okay. That is fair. And then you would get any, let's say there's something that gives you a benefit from casting spells from exile.
That is correct.
Something with the paradigm mechanic is that it's a trigger that allows you to cast a spell. Can you double that trigger to be able to cast 2 copies of that spell?
Yes. So the triggered ability is eventually is what's allowing you to cast the copy, but first it is putting that copy in exile, that copy of that object in exile, and then you may cast it. You put the copy of the card or the object, I'm sorry, in exile regardless. However, whether you cast it or not is completely up to you.
Which is probably a good thing because there may be times you may not want to cast the spell. Just
Exactly.
say if there's some sort of drawback and it doesn't force you to actually go through with it all the time. Um,
Cough,
But
cough, rolling vortex.
yes. Oh, that would be a good one. But could you double up? So it sounds like almost that you could double up with a strionic resonator that allows you to copy a triggered ability you control.
If you copy that ability at your pre-combat main phase, you'll put two of those abilities on the stack simultaneously. The first will resolve, you'll create the object in exile, and then you'll have the option to cast that from exile. We'll say for argument's sake that you do end up casting the Improvisation Capstone, follow the spell, do what it does. Paradigm doesn't trigger because you've already casted it once this turn. Then you resolve the second triggered ability, putting a new object in exile. Then you may cast it again from exile. And for argument's sake, we'll just say you choose not to this time.
So it does seem like there are some cool shenanigans you can do with this mechanic. If you're able to copy or double the triggers, I mean, some of them have some pretty good effects. Decorum Dissertation, where target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Just some card advantage. But like, take a look at Echo Casting Symposium, which target player creates a token that's a copy of target creature you control. So that could be you. That could be an opponent getting something copied.
You can target your opponent to create a copy of a creature you control. So with how this functions, the wording's a little weird. You target the opponent or the player, but creature you control does still refer to you as the caster of Echo Casting Symposium.
But say if you had some sort of negative effect on your board, something that could
Yep.
cause the opponent to discard cards or lose the game.
Eater of Days also works because it enters play and you skip 2 turns.
Put all the bad creatures. Well, maybe if we can not get hit by our own effect, then yeah. Now, one of the other things as well, Decorum Dissertation, the Echo Casting Symposium are both target players. Those can be de-swatted.
Yes.
If you were going to make something good and they have a redirect effect, they could potentially steal it.
Restoration Seminar also is a target. Return target non-land permanent card from your graveyard to the battlefield. That could also technically be de-swatted. But it still has to be inside your graveyard.
So 3 of them are more specific to targeting something, and then the other 2 are just you get the effect and resolve it.
Mhm.
Um, Taking a look at all the Paradigm, and Paradigm does seem like a strong mechanic. Within Commander, lower bracket Commander, where the games are going to go longer, so saying bracket maybe 1, 2, 3, 1 through 3, maybe even 4. These cards seem like they can gain some incremental advantage. And yeah, you can ramp up to them, but taking a look at a game of bracket 5 or CDH, the only one that I see being the most relevant is going to be the improvisation capstone. And maybe there's just some sort of storm effect where they're able to get this off and maybe getting the benefit on a few different turns. So,
And one weird mechanic that I want to, sorry, not mechanic, one very weird interaction that I want to put on Paradigm is it checks on name upon resolution. So if for some reason, somehow, but I don't know, you're playing uncards or even something, you can change the name of it on the stack, you can get a second exiled copy.
so these cards exile themselves.
Yeah.
And there are cards to bring exile cards back into the game. Karn is more specific, I believe, to artifacts.
hmm
Karn the Great Creator, I believe it is the one.
hmm
But outside of that, there is Pull from Eternity that I believe puts it back into your library. And I believe the other one is Rift Sweeper. But within bringing it back into the game, these cards are still have that name. So even if you were to cast this spell again, this would this still be the same named card as the one you casted earlier in the game?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you changed it somehow, some way, some shape or form.
And there is another channel that has gone over the paradigm mechanic that I would say also people can go and check out, Keeping It Casual MTG, where they go over like copying the effects. And apparently, paradigm, if your opponent is able to copy it, they get a paradigm effect.
Yep. It is a ability upon resolution of the spell.
These cards seem pretty cool. I think they're primarily going to see Commander play outside of the improvisation capstone. I don't really see too many of them making it a bracket 5 CDH. I just don't see 60 card. 60 card can sometimes do some weird stuff. People are able to figure out a strategy. Do you see this becoming played in any other format outside of Commander?
Paradigm, I don't think so. Commander has the real unique position of being a singleton format, and with Paradigm having the restriction of the name, 60 card doesn't get to utilize it as much. Um, Plus, in most of all the 60 card formats, 5 mana being the bottom line is kind of a steep cost.
Yeah. And a couple of more questions in regards to the paradigm mechanic. So, one, these are lessons. That's pretty cool. Uh,
Uncle Iroh!
I was gonna say, yeah. So, Iroh Grand Lotus. This gives those cards flashback one. So, if you're able to discard or mill one of these, you get to cast it for one, right? Is that correct?
I would have to look up Uncle Iroh, but if that is actual factual, what he says,
During your turn, each lesson in your graveyard has flashback one.
yes, they are actual factual lessons.
If only Iroh was not 6 mana to cast.
I don't know. Niv Mizzet saw play for some time.
The other card that I have a question in regards to, because this one requires something to be a copy, is Errant Street Artist. Has Flash, Defender, Haste. It costs one. It's a human rogue, 0/3. But it has an ability. Uh, one in a blue, tap, copy target spell you control that wasn't cast. You may choose new targets for the copy. Since these are technically being cast, this wouldn't be able to target those, correct?
That is correct. Because you are casting them from exile, she can't copy them.
So here's another question in regards to copies. So these paradigm seems kind of like your Isochron Scepter effect, where you create a copy and cast it. Exactly the same thing, right? So any cast restrictions, you get hit by like say a rule law effect, can't
Mhm.
cast more than one spell a turn. But copies, you can create as many copies as you want through effects like that because they're not cast. What is the difference between what a copy is, what is a spell, and what is creating a copy that is cast?
So a spell is everything that is on the stack. Even copies are spells. The difference between casting a copy and just copying a spell is how they're put onto the stack. There are certain cards like Paradigm where you can cast the copy. Or sorry, certain mechanics like Paradigm where you can cast the copy. That follows the restrictions of rule of law. That still triggers stuff like Opus, still triggers stuff like Magecraft, stuff like that. If you were to create a copy, it just puts it onto the stack. It bypasses all cast triggers. It bypasses any check like that. A little cool nuance that you can do with casting a copy is if the copied spell has a additional cost. So like buyback is an additional cost that you can put onto a spell. If I were to cast I need a buyback card.
Capsize, reiterate.
Yeah. So if you were to cast capsize and then I'm sorry, if you were to create a copy of capsize and cast it, you are now given the option to pay the additional mana, technically, to buy back it. Since you are creating or since you're casting a copy, if you do pay for the buyback, nothing happens except you were out 3 mana. But the same situation is like that. Same goes for kicker, multi-kicker, so be it. Um, when you are just creating a copy, you don't have that option, and it will not trigger cast triggers. It is just placed onto the stack, and there it is.
But yeah, no, I think Paradigm's cool mechanic. People may find some interesting ways to be able to utilize it, but it's going to be mainly a lower bracket thing, but I still think it's cool. Do you think it's likely that we may see this again in future sets, probably in a limited fashion?
No,
No?
I
These are our
don't.
paradigm spells?
I do fully believe that these are our paradigm spells. There might be one or two that are added later, but I think Wizards is riding a very fine line with that mechanic getting a copy of it at the beginning of every pre-combat main phase is very strong, depending on the spell. Imagine getting a Brainstorm at the beginning of every single pre-combat main phase. Brainstorm's not a strong card, but drawing 3 every turn for free?
Slight filter. Getting 1+ and getting to look at what you want to put back. It
Sure. But
there's utility there. Yeah.
even so, and plus they're free casts, everything's happening. It's I don't think it's coming back.
Even with their higher cost, I mean, within Commander, there is a lot of fast mana, even outside of
Mm.
the zero rocks. So it is possible to get one of these off pretty quickly. Or I'm not saying Joda, but like the older Joda 4-color, you can pay Wooburg, you can cast a spell from your hand without paying its mana cost. So
Mm-hmm.
not to say that you couldn't just maybe pay two
Oh, there's
more,
definitely ways
like
of
a
cheating it out.
yeah.
This is Magic the Gathering. We break the rules all the time.
That's what we're supposed to do. Um, it's when they put more restrictions, we just have to find workarounds.
Hmm.
All right.
Exactly.
Now, moving on to the next one, that would be Opus. And Opus is a cast trigger.
That is correct. Opus also uh, is not a keyword. It is just a mechanic upon mini cards. Um, Opus reads, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, do X. If 5 or more mana was spent to cast this spell, do Y. Usually Y is a much more, it is a bigger version, or sorry, an additive version of the previous effect. A good rendition of this is Color Storm Stallion. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. If 5 or more mana was spent to cast that spell, you can create a token copy of it.
Right. It's kind of like the same thing. We have essentially a mill effect, expedition, tide color. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, target a player, they mill 3. If you do Opus, player mills 10.
Yep,
Um, Elemental mascot, you get buffed, or you get to exile a spell. New
yep.
Seeker, you get filter, or you actually get to keep the card. And then there's a few other ones that get buffed. Now, the one that stands out that I believe from a competitive aspect is going to be Molten Core Maestro. And that is a generic in a red, 2/2 Goblin Bard, Menace, Opus. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a +1 counter on this creature. If 5 or more mana was spent to cast this spell, add an amount of red equal to this creature's power, which you could also just buff this creature through another way. Now, this one has combo potential. I unfortunately do not remember offhand exactly, but you're casting something recurable with that 5 or more mana. Now, one thing I was going to ask is buyback, which we brought up a little bit earlier. Buyback, is that a additional cost? Is that an alternative cost? Does it add to the mana value of the spell?
Buyback is an additional cost. That being said, I am pretty sure, and if it's not, I'll tattletale myself in the comments. Uh, it does add to the amount of mana spent to cast the spell for the purposes of Opus. This also gets to play with the effects of X cost spells. It just looks at the amount of mana used to cast it. A lot like the Bloomburrow mechanic. Was it Expend, I think is what it was called?
Expend is one where you spend so much mana you get an effect, I believe.
Right. This is very similar. As long as you spend 5 or more mana to cast that spell, you get the bigger effect. Um, that could be the weird buyback um, storm spell that VV plays, or that goes infinite with
Is it
Stormkill Artist.
Haze of
Hazer
Rage?
Rage. Hazer Rage, you pay 3 for the buyback, 2 for the casting cost, I believe. I'm probably off on that. Um, but that's 5 mana. And then you can pay the additional, or you get the effect, goes back in your hand. you get the effect from Molten Core Maestro, rinse and repeat.
So Haze of Rage is only 2 on the buyback, but there are other examples.
Okay.
Searing Touch, I believe, is the other one. I think that's the one people mention for comboing with. Searing Touch is 1 to cast and 4
Mhm.
to buyback, and it
Okay.
deals 1 damage to, I believe, like maybe.
I think it's any target. Target creature or player. So it's any target.
So Searing Touch is one of them. Reiterate is another.
Mhm.
So there are a couple of different cards. This is the one I believe people are talking about for bracket 5 competitive commander. Um, You can go infinite with one of these if you get this creature's power high enough.
With the costs counting as well, stacks effects also can contribute to that.
I was
So
gonna ask that.
things like Sphere of Resistance, which makes all spells cost an additional, that does contribute to it. When it says all mana spent to cast it means everything when you cast it.
I know sometimes the wording of those cards, those stacks effects, have an influence. Would Thalia increase the mana value on one of these cards because it increases non-creature spells by 1?
Yes.
Theoretically, not a good idea. You could play your own stacks pieces to enable a combo. I mean, you still have to get the creature and all that, but it is a possibility. Um,
Just like Lavinia Azorius Renegade, I mentioned her earlier. One of her specific lines of text says, uh, whenever an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter it. If you have a Sphere of Resistance in play or a Thalia that makes spells cost an additional 1, your Lavinia now is irrelevant because you are spending mana to cast those spells.
Same thing with a Vexing Bauble, right?
Yes.
This is why learning the rules helps your play. Being able to see all of your options and maybe that you had a line of play that you could take. Yeah, I think there's a benefit. Now, Molten Core Maestro is definitely the card that I think is going to see play in competitive. I know for at least CDH bracket 5, could you see this card maybe being in a modern or a legacy? Pioneer has access to Treasure Cruise, so you
Mm.
can delve.
So first off, if you delve the card to make it 2 mana or 1 mana for Treasure Cruise, it does not work. You have to actually spend 5 mana. Delving does not count towards that cost.
Whoa, so it actually changes the mana value of the card.
It No. It changes the amount of mana you spent to cast it.
And this card is saying what you spent.
Correct. That also being said, there is a world where Modern does see some of this being played because there are some decks that do some really big, dumb, stupid things, mainly Eldrazi's. Granted, I don't think Eldrazi plays any of these cards, but maybe like I know there's a popper deck called Gruul Ponzi Scheme is the archetype. I don't know if any of the Opus cards are. Oh, there are some that are commons. Maybe they see play in popper.
There's always a possibility. I know some of the better abilities are looking like they're uncommon or higher. Yeah, for the most part, you get to cast an insert sorcery, you get effect, you pay 5 or more on that insert sorcery, you get a benefit. This is also going to bring up the question of cost reduction. Because Delve is a cost reduction, right? Does that mean that if you're playing like Mizzix of the Ismagus, which reduces in relation to your experience counters on your instants or sorceries, or say even your Ruby Medallion, that's now less mana being spent?
Correct. I can spend. I can cast Finale of Devastation X equals a trillion. But if I only actually spend 2 red mana, it will not trigger Opus because I only spent 2 red mana.
I mean, that's understandable. And I guess that's fair and balanced, right? You get a benefit when you get stacks and you get a
Well,
negative.
it's fair and balanced until you start creating infinite mana. Then it doesn't matter. Finale of Devastation, X equals a trillion. and I'm spending 1 trillion mana. I guess Devastation is green.
All right. Opus looks like it's definitely fitting in the Spellslinger archetype. The main ones are going to be that Molten Core Maestro, the Expedition Tidecaller. The one that I do see coming up in conversation is Color Storm Stallion. Also, if you look at the borderless art, looks very familiar to something parked outside of the DIA airport.
If you ever come to Denver, you will see a Color Storm Stallion leaving the airport.
See, just a reason to visit. Yeah, no, this thing looks very akin. But it is a cool card. It's got Ward 1, Haste, 3/3, cost 3 to play, generic in a blue and a red. And then Opus, whenever you cost an instant sorcery, you essentially have prowess, you get a +1. Yes, prowess is non-creature, and this is specified instants or sorceries. But if 5 or more was spent, you get to create a copy of this creature, which kind of like the paradigm, right? If you're actually able to do something to it, you get an additional effect. Am I correct when you make that token?
On the next cast, yes.
Well, yes, the Opus 5 or greater. So an example of this, I was trying to look for mutate cards. There's not too many that are relevant, I feel like, with this horse, but Sea Dasher Octopus, just because it's the one that actually doesn't require you to keep mutating on top of it. Yes, you could mutate more on top of your copies, but creating another token is not going to
Oh, that's nasty.
give
You
you an
can
ETB.
mutate this.
Yeah,
Oh, god dang it,
it's not a human.
Titus.
It's not a human.
Oh, I can already sense judges everywhere just trembling.
Well, think about it, right? I mean, you'll have to be in a Spellslinger deck. You'll have to be in Instants and Sorceries, but maybe put it in a Tamir list. And if you're able,
Lutri is also legal now.
yes. I don't know.
I'm out. Goodbye.
It seems like there's some fun shenanigans, but that's
Yeah.
kind of like if you are, I don't know anything outside of Mutate, but I do believe there are ways to give permanent effects to cards, correct?
I don't think so outside of stickers and mutate. I'm probably missing some niche mechanic though.
Are there stickers that could give abilities to these creatures that you could create additional
I'm
to?
pretty sure.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I have not messed around with stickers because they seemed
I
like a
don't either.
headache.
I don't like defiling my cards either.
Well, you can use proxy sticker tokens, Austin.
I have been ever.
Yeah,
Still feels wrong.
it's too much work. Um,
Exactly.
I do think this is a neat card. Plus, if you're playing it with like a Cryptolith, right, you can tap it for mana, the copies for mana. So there are
Hmm.
probably some fun shenanigans that can be had, at least within the Commander format. Brackets 1 through 4. Looking at you, do something with this.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Oh, the Opus definitely sees play in brackets 1 through 4. There ain't a doubt in my mind.
and if you get the borderless, get something memorable.
Lucifer.
But yeah, I don't believe there's too much to say outside of these. Do you have any thoughts in regards to this mechanic or?
I think it's a weird take on a pre-existing mechanic, Magecraft. A new flair on it. I just think it's cool, actually. I a spell slinger at heart. I love Viren, Voice of Duality to death. God, I wish that deck was better.
Oh, Opus is also an ability you can trigger additionally, correct?
Yes, with cards like Viren, Voice of Duality, or Harmonic Prodigy, you sure can double the triggers.
Nice. Moving on to the increment mechanic. So increment is very familiar. It is whenever you cast a spell, if that amount of mana you spent is greater than this creature's power or toughness, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So increment. One thing to notice off of increment is it is not restricted by instant or sorcery, which does seem a little bit unfair compared to some of the other mechanics that are specified to instant or sorcery, which this is very creature focused. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is very similar to another mechanic called Evolve, but I think this one is a lot stronger. My reasoning behind this is it happens on cast, and like you said, the additional costs contribute to that. And it only cares about the amount of mana to cast the spell. So if I Jorga Warcaller, 1 green multi-kicker green generic, I can kick it 5 times, spending 11 mana, I am now casting a spell using 11 mana. If I have a creature that's at 10/10, it'll trigger it.
Or if you have a creature that's 1/1, it will trigger it.
Yep, that is the downside. You can spend 20 mana on a card and you only get the 1 counter.
And just looking at some of the creatures, though, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's too new. You look at, so you take a look at Tester of the Tangential. That almost looks like, yes, you have to pay into it, but a graft ability. And yes, graft
Yep.
ability, I believe, is when a creature enters, but it's moving around counters.
There's a Simic card also that actually has evolved that has a tap ability. You can move counters from it to some other creature.
So it's, yeah, it's within the realm of these mechanics. I think that it's still cool. I do think it's a little unfair though, because we are in the spellcasting set and they're just
Yeah.
like, yeah, we're going to restrict another mechanic we're going to talk about in Opus, and we're going to let this one be the best of all of them. I don't know. That seems unfair to
Simic
me.
needs the help.
Does
Actually, I
it?
take that back. No, never mind.
I don't think so. And a lot of these cards are pretty good. I don't know if they see, bracket 5 CDH play, or even like modern, but taking a look at like Ambitious Augmenter. This card reminds me of Experiment 1. Uh, it's a 1/1 for 1. Very easy to get the counters on it. Also, the difference is evolve, you have to have that creature enter and get the triggered ability. This, you can just get a counter from protecting it with a counter spell. I think these are relatively strong cards. We'll see them more than likely in standard, but yeah. And then even when Ambitious Augmenter dies, if it had one or more counters on it, create a green and blue 0/0 fractal creature token. And you put the counters on that creature. It's a really strong card. But taking a look at some of the other ones, we have Topiary Lecture. This one adds an amount of green equal to this creature's power. Marwyn the Nurturer, yes, it's elves that buff it, but it taps for its power, I believe. There's
I'm
very
sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say there are very similar effects to this mana producing ability. Gyre Sage, but what were you going to say,
Yep.
Austin?
My personal favorite of all these, and not just because I might be jumping on the bandwagon of the Gringo Burr or Spell Slinging Go Burr, but Bretta Wise Extra
Berta Wise Extrapolator. Polator.
has Increment. She's a 4-drop, 2 generic, green, blue, legendary creature frog druid, so she can be your commander. She also might be the face commander of one of the precons, who knows? 1/4 increment. Whenever one or more 1/1 counters are put on Bretta, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. X, tap, create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token, and put X 1/1 counters on that creature.
So I think the thing that probably stands out to you is the producing mana ability.
Yeah!
So
It's
other,
basically cost reduction on a triggered ability.
but you're paying the mana. You're paying.
But it's a triggered ability. You just copy the triggers.
That is true. That is something else that you can do with this card. So I do think this may see like fringe bracket 5 play. I don't know what some of the lines are, but I do believe there are ways to put counters, produce mana, and kind of go through a loop. Do you have any other thoughts on Berta?
Uh, it's a frog. It's obviously supreme. I don't know what else to
Your
tell you.
Valley Flood Caller. That's right. Your Valley Flood
Exactly.
Caller. Yeah.
Ah, we're cooking. Also, it doesn't. You can remove the increment text box, and it would still be powerful. Stuff like there are creatures where if you tap it, put a number of 1/1 counters on target creature. That triggers her.
You only get, though, one or more. It's not a whenever, it's just whenever one or more trigger. So
Sure.
5 counters is the same as 1. So if you're able to do it one at a time within an activated ability, yeah, no, I see something here. So another card is going to be Pensive Professor, which makes me think of Fathom Mage. Now, Fathom Mage may be a bit better because it's whenever a +1 counter is put on it, you get to draw a card. So if I'm reading that correctly, uh, whenever you put 5 on, you get 5 cards. Pensive Professor is going to require you to do those separate instances. You can't do five at once. You're going to have to do one at a time. However, it has the same effect. You draw a card, and this one, instead of Evolve, which Fathom Mage has the cast trigger.
Mm.
So Fathom Mage may be better in a sense that you take advantage of something ETBing in, but just getting this creature down, protecting it, it's a 0/2. It's going to be fairly easy to get the counters on it, and you're going to get some advantage. Um, the main takeaway is similar to other Simic stuff, being a bit better on having the generic spells cast. But outside of Berta, I don't really see anything else. Do you have any other thoughts on Increment?
Simic's gonna Simic. I this seems very like a very Simic keyword to me.
All right. So our next mechanic is going to be Repartee. Austin, can you tell us about Repartee?
Sure. Repartee is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, do X. Biggest catch here, um, and even Wizards thought of it before the set is released. It's inside the Secrets of Strixhaven mechanics form thread that they released. If you have a card like Sea King's Blessing, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, I think that was the Nadu card that it abused.
Yes. Uh, anyway, if it targets multiple creatures, you're only going to get one trigger of Repartee per card that has Repartee. Um, the reason why this is different than Nadu is Nadu gave that ability to all the creatures. So all the creatures, since they got targeted, are going to trigger. This creature is only going to see that your spell is making a target and then not, and then trigger. It doesn't count if you're doing it more than once.
Yeah, so this mechanic seems fairly fairly simple. And most of the cards are kind of related to combat stuff or just your permanents, creatures. +1 counters, maybe giving evasion. Taking a look at something like Melancholic Poet. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell that targets the creature, each opponent loses 1 life and gains 1 life. Pretty simple. Stirring Hope Singer. Uh, Flying Lifelink, but Repartee, whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell that targets a creature, put a +1 counter on each creature you control. So that one's pretty good, but yeah, I'm not seeing anything that really stands out in a lot of these cards. Even Graduation Day, it's a 1 cost enchantment that has it, and whenever you cast an instant sorcery spell that targets a creature, put a +1 counter on target creature you control. It's a good card, but the restriction to being just instants and sorceries, I think, is a little bit of a damper. Not to say that there's too many other things that target on the stack, as a spell. One thing that is good to note is it doesn't have to be your creature. It can be anybody's creature. Just says targets a creature.
That
So
is
if
true.
you go to remove somebody else's, you get a buff on yours or the evasion.
I actually do personally think that Melancholic Poet is going to be a sleeper one. Um, just because there are so many weird niche things that we can do in Magic, there's probably an infinite combo out there that this could be a finisher. Like easy.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And this one is very splashable. It's a generic and a black,
Yeah.
and it only costs 2. I think that's the main thing. And to speak in regards to that, just looking at how easy the spell is to cast, will influence play. There is a card in here that I do really like, but it's very limited because of its casting costs. So it is Conciliator's Duelist. It is a white and a black, so a 4 mana value, 4/3 core warlock. And it has whenever this creature enters, draw a card. Each player loses, or yeah, no, actually that's better. Each player loses 1 life. I thought it was just you. So yeah, no, if you're able to gain life on this card, say you're in your aristocrats or your Elias, Ilkor, whatever your cleric is that gains you life on entering the battlefield, you get to go neutral and your opponents go down 1. So that's actually a little bit cool. But also its ability is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, exile up to one creature, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So there's not infinite flickers here, but there is utility and versatility, in which you can be like, hey, I don't want you to swing that Blightsteel Colossus at me. Or, hey, I need to get rid of your stacks piece, your stacks creature, because it only can target creatures. Or I need to protect my creature and I get the benefit of removing something else from, say, an opponent's board. So I do think this card is relatively dynamic. The reason, though, I think, lower bracket play, it will see, play in there. It's very restricted. If it wasn't, it's a high mana value, being a 4 cost, but if it wasn't 2 white pips and 2 black pips, it'd be a little bit more reasonable. I think you're going to see it in your Orzhov lists,
Mhm.
maybe being able to splash into something else. Could definitely see some standard play, but that is yeah, I think that's a cool card.
It also can exile itself,
Yes.
so it can get this ETB trigger again.
You can also Panar Harmonicon or Starfield Vocalist. So there are things you can do. But one card that I kind of wish the mana value was lower, that I do think it would have higher bracket to play, is going to be the Forum Necroscribe. This it's this one stood out to me. It is 5 generic, 1 black, 5/4 Troll Warlock, War, discard a card, and its Repartee ability is whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets a creature, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. It has Reanimator effect. There are way more hoops on this card to jump through because I was trying to think about like, can I additional cost? I looked up cards. I didn't think I've seen very many. Additional cost sacrifice something, target a creature on an instant or sorcery to get that creature back. So some looping. I do think this is another card you can buy back with, but the buybacks, the number of buyback spells that target and are good, I don't think there are very many. No,
uh,
like they buff
not in
your
fun.
creatures, but there's better things you could be doing. That's why I don't think you'll see bracket 5 CDH play. I don't think you'll see modern play. I think this is probably a standard car in bracket 1 through 4.
I think there is one black card that has buyback that is actually kind of playable.
Does it target a creature though?
No, I'm pretty sure it targets a player.
Yeah. So that specification of targeting a creature makes it a little bit more difficult. But I do think there are things where you could loop this card, and it's kind of like, do you remember Extus Auric Overlord, which had Magecraft? So, the stronger mechanic from the other Strixhaven, the first Strixhaven set. I'll read Extus. Extus Auric Overlord is a double modal face card. On the front side, you have Extus Auric Overlord, legendary creature, human warlock, double strike magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery spell, return target non-legendary creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So not to the battlefield, a little bit weaker. There are still things you can do with that from your hand. And then on the back, you have Awaken the Blood Avatar. 6 generic and a black and a red. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 less for each creature sacrificed this way, and then each opponent sacrifices a creature, create a 3/6 black and red avatar, creature token with haste, and whenever this creature attacks, it deals 3 damage to each opponent. So the main thing is the front side. In regards to, say, like a discard effect or a sacrifice as an additional cost effect. So if you have a Thrill of Possibility, you discard a creature, that spell being cast, you can immediately target the creature you put into the graveyard. Or say you are playing a burnt offering or a sacrifice, it is an additional cost to sacrifice the creature. You can target that creature that went to the graveyard.
Yes.
Extasis Magecraft ability. So with the Necro Forum Scribe, you can sacrifice as an additional cost. The problem is how many spells actually target. So it's like a weaker variant of that. I
Yeah.
could see some play, but yeah, within these the rule set of Repartee, it's pretty simple. I don't think there's too much to say in regards to what they had available to us. I do think like this is kind of limited, like Opus is. It makes sense. It's a spell slinging set. However, Increment didn't get restricted to instants and sorceries. Yeah, still, still feelings on that, but it makes sense.
As
Um,
an exact number, there are 5 Orzhov cards with buyback that target creatures.
all right, there we go.
3 of them are actually somewhat playable. 2 of them, not so much.
Well, if you want to check out Necroforum Scribe, it should be relatively cheap and a fun thing to brew around.
It's also black, so the 6 mana is not really a problem considering you
Yeah,
can
you
just
can
reanimate it
reanimate it itself.
into
Uh,
reanimate.
yeah, I think this mechanic's pretty simple. Do you have any other thoughts on it?
No, I think it's technically been done before, but this is a really cool and interesting way of going about it. It's a lot like Opus. It's definitely been done before, but this makes it a lot more flavorful. Is the word I'm
Yeah,
looking for.
like we're getting a refinement process
Yeah.
or making it just more thematic.
Yep.
So the next mechanic is going to be Infusion. Relatively simple. Um, if you gain life this turn, you get an effect. The mechanic reminds me of Morbid, Revolt, Void. You fulfill a condition, you get an additional effect, kind of like the other ones, but you can gain life earlier in the turn and then cast something, and it will have, depending on the spell, seen that life gain. Uh, Something to note within this, I think there are 2 card examples that are kind of good for showcasing this, and that is going to be Follow the Lumerets and Lumerets Favor. Now, Follow the Lumerets is a sorcery. Infusion. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or a land card from among them and put it into your hand. If you gain life this turn, you may instead reveal 2 creatures and or land cards from among them and put them in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Next one is Lumerets Favor Infusion. When you cast a spell, copy it. If you gain life this turn, you may choose new targets for the copy. Target creature gets +2/+4 until end of turn. So, Volumet's sorcery. This card, I believe, if I've read it correctly, if you gain life this turn. So this is not a cast trigger. This is upon resolution of the spell. Whereas Lumeret's Favor reads when you cast the spell, copy if you gain life this turn, meaning that it checks immediately upon cast. Am I correct in that, Austin?
So with follow the limerits, it's just an intervening if clause. So it just checks if you gained life. If you did, cool, we'll do this instead. Um, but you are correct also that limerits favor is a trigger that happens on the stack, kind of like a storm for storm cards.
I think there is only the one that actually checks upon cast, and that's Lumeret's Favor. Everything else, you have an opportunity to gain life at some point to gain the additional effect upon resolution of the spell. So, say you have the spell in the stack, right? And some more stuff happens. You can sacrifice one of your old school pests, compare the new ones. The difference is old ones, when they die, you gain life, and the new ones, when you attack, you gain life. But say you sacrifice one of your pests, gain some life, and you resolve your fall Lumerets, you get that additional effect. Whereas if you gain that additional life, after you cast Lumeret's Favor, you get no additional effect. Most of them are going to be like Fall of the Lumerets. They are going to be there until the spell resolves. And some of them will have abilities because the creatures will just gain that ability while on the field once you trigger the set condition. Um, Pretty simple ability, even with something like Tragedy Feaster, which is 2 generic and 2 black pips. It is a 7/6 creature demon trample ward, discard a card, and infusion. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice a permanent unless you gain life this turn. So, same kind of thing, right? That end step trigger, or once that trigger goes on the stack, you can gain life and not have to do that sacrifice effect, correct?
Yes. So at the beginning of your end step, that trigger will go onto the stack and it will be there. You don't sacrifice the permanent until it resolves. So if you were to then, in response to that trigger, cast or crack your Elixir of Immortality to gain 5 life and shuffle your graveyard into your library, then you resolve that ability and you're fine. It's actually one of my favorite mechanics in the game is responding to the trigger that is detrimental with something that prevents it. I do want to note as well, on that same vein, Poisoner's Apprentice is an ETB trigger. So when it enters the battlefield, let's say it triggers some Soul Sister to where you gain a life. If you did not gain life that turn before the creature entered, its ability will not trigger. The reason being is both the triggered abilities will check at the exact same time. And by the time that the Soul Sister's triggered ability resolves and you gaining the life, the check for Poisoner's Apprentice would already have happened and it will not be on the stack.
Moving on to our last mechanic, and I do think this is the coolest, even though it is familiar to other ones, and that is the prepare mechanic. Could you go into that one, Austin?
The prepared mechanic reads verbatim. While it's prepared, you may cast a copy of its spell. During doing so, unprepares it. Its spell is the secondary spell on the card. For instance, Adventurous Eater is the creature that's 2 generic, 1 black. This creature enters prepared. She's a 3/2, but her spell is Have a Bite, which is 1 black, sorcery, put a 1/1 token on target creature, you gain 1 life. How this mechanic works, once that permanent becomes prepared, you take their spell and create a copy in exile, like Paradigm. Then, at any point in the game, following normal timing restrictions, as long as that permanent is prepared, you can cast that spell from exile.
So one of the downsides and upsides of prepare is that you have to have the creature there.
Yes, the creature has to be in play because the prepared is a designation to that card. If that creature leaves play, or sorry, that permanent leaves play, there it is no longer prepared and the exiled card, I'm pretty sure, just vanishes. It might just stay in exile and you can't cast it. I'm not 100% sure on the nuances of that. Either way, you can't return it to your library because it's not an actual card.
Right. So this does bring up some questions in regards to the prepare creatures. Now, Adventure and Omen are somewhat similar but
Mhm.
different to this mechanic. Whereas Adventure, you can cast either side. It is still tied to the creature, but you have the flexibility. And also Omen, you have the flexibility except it gets shuffled into its deck. Whereas Adventure puts the creature or permanent, because they did add that to enchantments and other stuff, um, into exile where you are able to later cast it. Where this just creates a copy of the card that you are able to cast. The downside is you don't get the versatility of the creature or the non-creature ability. Same thing with Omen. This you have to have the permanent there to be able to cast the spell. So with the prepare mechanic, a lot of the creatures, not all of them, enter prepared. Is that an ETB, or does it get through like stacks pieces like Torpor Orb?
To my understanding from reading the rules text, reading the form, everything, I'm 99% sure it's not an ETB trigger because there's nowhere that says when, whenever, or at. I'm pretty sure it's just a designation added to the card once the condition is met, whether it entering play or activating the ability that upon resolution, it becomes prepared. I also want to point out the reason I'm saying permanent is because if you make that one of those creatures no longer a creature, it is still prepared. It will stay prepared until it leaves the battlefield.
If you like Song of the Dryads,
Or swift reconfiguration.
it still has the prepared spell and you are able to cast it.
Yes, it is a designation to the permanent.
So say you have a Machine God's Effigy or an Imposter Mech, two cards that are able to be a non-creature but copy a creature, whether it's an opponent's or yours.
My immediate thought is yes, that does work. because it enters. Yes, I will confirm and.
If anybody knows, you're welcome to disagree in the comments. Because it is a static thing, is the spell being cast? Is it a spell being cast, or is it a ability, like an activated ability of a creature?
When the permanent is prepared, you take the copy of their spell and put it into exile. Then, at any point in the game, while that permanent is prepared, you can cast it, following normal timing restrictions.
But you would have to use an actual counterspell. You can't use a stifle.
No, it is an actual spell being cast.
Okay.
So, for example, back to Adventurous Eater. It enters play, it's prepared. During main phase 2, I decide I want to cast Have a Bite. So I tap 1 black and cast Have a Bite from exile. And then goes on the stack, triggers whatever cast triggers there may be, whatever it may be. The caveat to that also is just like Paradigm, if an opponent has Drannith Magistrate in play, you cannot cast that spell from exile.
Right.
Also, these you do have to pay their casting costs. So like Have a Bite is 1 black. And you do have to follow timing restrictions. Have a Bite is a sorcery.
So because most of these are sorceries compared to instants, there are some instants they have timing restrictions. Now, the reason why I ask this, can we actually give these spells flash or cast them as they have flash with a Veldelkin Orrery or
Mm-hmm.
even like a Valley Flood Caller or a Leyline of Anticipation?
Yes, because those spells, if I'm not mistaken, read you may cast spells, or in the case of Valley Floodcaller, you may cast non-creature spells as though they had flash. These are still being cast as long as they don't, as long as this flash inducer doesn't read. You may cast spells from your hand as though they had flash. You have the full green light to cast them whenever you want.
And the other thing is too, timing restrictions. So
Mm-hmm.
the active player gains priority in regards to their spells. So you cast this creature, theoretically, you should be able to immediately, before an opponent is able to use a removal card, um, cast the sorcery speed spell right after.
Yes, because you cast the creature, it resolves, enters prepared, and then immediately you can cast their prepared card.
Now, the thing is, if anybody has anything that causes a triggered ability, you lose that priority, correct? To cast that unless you're able to give it instant speed.
If it is a sorcery, yes, you do gain priority first if you are the active player, if it is your turn. Um, but if it's a sorcery, if there's a triggered ability, you can't cast it.
So, yeah, most of them are. That is something to be aware of, I think, just if there's anything that causes a triggered ability. Um, uh,
You are thinking of something like Amulet of Vigor, where permanent enters play under your control, you may untap it.
the other thing is, too, any cost reducer, these spells in exile can be cost reduced as well, correct?
Yes, because you are still having to go down the process of casting the spell, declaring targets, paying costs, uh, putting it on the stack, so on and so forth. Not in that order. That was the wrong order.
The other thing is because it creates a spell, and the big gimmick or sell to a lot of these is you get to cast your Emeritus of Ideation and cast a Ancestral Recall. That Ancestral Recall is Ancestral Recall, correct?
That's a trap question, and I don't like it. So the answer is technically yes. When you go to cast the prepared cast Emeritus' spell, when it is put onto the stack and when you declare it, it is actual factual Power 9 Ancestral Recall. However, the name of the card when it is inside your library, because I feel this is where you're going with this, is Emeritus of Ideation.
Right. It's I believe this was a thing with the adventure and omen cards as well. It's the
Yes.
creature. So when you tutor this, you are tutoring the creature.
As well as when it comes down to ban
Cast.
lists,
Yes.
Commander, the power nine's not legal unless it's tacked onto a creature. Joda's a really good, or maybe it's not Joda. The 5 color legendary creature where you could tap and add a power 9 to play. You could put a Black Lotus into play.
Garth.
Yes, Garth the One Eye.
So these copies of things, hey, look, you wanted your reserved list or your banned cards. This is the way you get to play them. But yeah, so the spell's value though is going to be the creature. When you tutor this, if you can get a card that says 3 or less, whatever it may be, you can only search this up for that creature, correct? The spell's total mana value, say if you have a Dark Confidant, which allows you to reveal the card and lose life equal to its mana value, that is only going to lose you the creature's mana value, correct?
Correct. So the niche thing about these cards, as opposed to the Omen, Adventure, Split, Explosion, whatever, is the spell tacked onto it has no correlation to the card except that that is their prepared spell.
Even though this isn't Ancestral Recall can be banned, right? This is still a spell that they have named like Ancestral Recall, Wheel of Fortune, stuff like that. It is a named speller card. There are cards that can actually hit name cards. One of them is Nevermore, a generic white enchantment that as Nevermore enters the battlefield, name an online card. The name card can't be cast. And another one that may have seen some past modern play was Meddling Mage, which is a blue and a white 2/2 human wizard. As Meddling Mage enters the battlefield, choose an online card. Spells with the chosen name can't be cast. Do these spells actually stop people from casting the prepared spell?
Yes, because when you go to attempt to cast it, that is its name. Is either Ancestral Recall, Wheel of Fortune, Seething Song, Reanimate, Demonic Tutor. The list goes on and on.
But that is a good thing to note. Um, yeah, the prepare mechanic's pretty cool. There are some things you can, I think one of the big takeaways is you can recur a lot of the effects because they enter prepared. So if you can flicker them or reanimate them, whatever you need to do, you'll be able to get that effect. Now, some of them have some conditions that have to be met before they do anything. I believe one of them, the one with Wheel of Fortune, Nactamon Lore Spinner, the Jackal Wizard, 3/3, generic and a red. At the beginning of your upkeep, if a player has one or fewer cards in hand, this creature becomes prepared. You have to meet a more specific condition than just entering. And there are a few more, but they can also get their prepared spell a lot easier. Another one that I don't think it's necessarily, highly competitive, but I do like is Inspired Sky Painter. It is a blue and a red lizard wizard. Best typing. um, Flying, when this creature enters in or whenever one or more creature tokens you control deal a combat to a player, this creature becomes prepared. And then it has an ability, Maestro's Gift, for 3 generic and a red and a blue. Create a token copy of target creature you control. That token gains haste until end of turn. Just token shenanigans. Plus, you don't
Yep.
sack the tokens. It's easy to become prepared. Um, Now, the reason why these cards kind of vary in their competitiveness, I think the main takeaway is the mana value. While Emeritus of Ideation is 5 mana to cast, cheating things in, reanimate. I think this could see outside of like standard some modern play. Not to say it will, but it could. Anything to cheat spells into play, and now you get a pay one, draw three. I think that's one of the benefits of permanents too. There are different ways to get them into play without paying the mana cost. I do think these cards, like there's a variety of them that are very powerful effects, but it's like looking at the mana cost is one thing too. Well, you can do some of the recursive abilities. Like let's take Emeritus of Woe. talk to a Rowan player where they can take advantage of this because we just talked about that spell reduction, where this creature enters prepared, and at the beginning of your end step, if two or more creatures die this turn, this creature becomes prepared, and it has Demonic Tutor on it. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. Which in a Rowan deck that gets reduction from losing life and activating Rowan, this becomes a just a demonic tutor, like 2 mana. But the mana value of the spell, and there's other spells that just beat it in overall utility. Not to say it's not a good card, and there's definitely a lot of these on here for a variety of things. I think the whole waiting thing, especially you have to pay attention to your mana and resources, but there's definitely a lot of cool cards. Some of them have instant abilities on them. And I believe one we were talking about was the Blazing Fire Singer, which everybody has talked about with the Displacer Kitten, which is a lot of mana if you don't already have like those things in play. But Blazing Fire Singer enters prepared and it has Seething Song. So for 6 mana, you can produce 5 mana unless you have a cost reduction.
Yeah, it's cool and gimmicky. I don't think Blazing Fire Stinger will see playing competitive.
I think
However,
people may try. It's Storm, remember? You're casting 2 spells. Your Storm
but
covenant.
that's even just to get the creature into play. So Displacer Kitten's 4 mana. Blazing Fire Stinger is 3 mana. That's already 7. And then you have to cast Seething Song for another 3, which is 10. And you net 5 and go infinite.
Look, we're in blue red. So we have the red. We had that. We we cast the actual Seething Song first. We cast the
Sure, okay.
Blazing Fire Singer.
So there's another 3 mana.
Yeah. I asked again, same Rowan player, which you can generate some good mana off this card, but there when you Magic is a game with a lot of cards that are available to us, especially in Commander, that there's a lot of things that we can be doing. But I do, what are your thoughts and feelings on this mechanic, even with all some of the rule interactions?
I think it's very powerful. I actually think some of these cards will see play in Legacy because Legacy has access to show and tell
Yeah. And reanimate.
and reanimate.
They
But
didn't
I'm
ban that one,
pretty
right? Yeah, they didn't ban that one.
no, it did not get banned in Legacy. However, Demonic Tutor is banned in Legacy, and so is Ancestral Recall.
Look.
Guess what's tacked onto a creature that enters prepared?
One of them that I saw that I don't think it quite gets there, but having like Brainstorm on a creature that's recurable, like Harmonized Trio, which is 1 Merfolk Bard Wizard. 1/1 tap 2 untap creatures. This creature becomes prepared. Pay 1 for a Brainstorm instant. Draw 3, then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library. I think that could see something somewhere. The creature
It's 1
type,
mana.
yeah. I mean,
It's also a
there's
Merfolk.
yeah, and a wizard. Wizard.
So hear me out. Those are some very strong archetypes. I'm sure this does see play somewhere.
I think maybe we see some more of these cards here and there. I do think there are some with some cool abilities that are easily recurable, but there are some comparable cards to say, is this better than the card? And I think maybe it finds a different home. Like Tatiola Benthic Druid, the Merfolk. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, draw a card, gain a life. Tam, Observant Sequencer. This one is 1 mana less to cast, but it has a landfall ability. Whenever a land enters, Tam becomes prepared, and then you can pay a green and a blue at sorcery speed for deep sight. You draw a card and gain a life. Which, if you actually want the spell to be cast, you have to pay 2 mana for it, which seems like a bit of a bummer. We talked about Displacer Kitten. I'm sure there are other effects that actually want spells cast, but there are some cards where it's comparable to where it just doesn't make the cut. Is there any other creatures that in this set or this mechanic that kind of stand out to you, at least from a
Uh,
competitive standpoint?
Yavimaya Bloom Mage, kind of. Channel is a broken card, which is why it stands out to me. But man, getting it prepared is kind of rough.
Do you have any more thoughts on any of these mechanics?
I think some of them are underwhelming. I think some of them are really interesting and cool. I'm actually very excited for the prepared mechanic. It's going to be a nightmare from a judge standpoint, probably, because how the hell do you denote if a creature is prepared or not? I think it'll be cool.
They should have printed some prepared tokens.
God, I hope so.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
Well, if any of you listeners have anything, feel free to post them in the comments. If we missed something, if we're wrong about something, if you have just a cool idea in regards to this, I'd like to hear about it.
Or if you have more punts.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, yeah, I agree with you. I think there's some very cool things, some underwhelming things. It'll be interesting moving forward to see what people do with this stuff.
If you're going to pick up any of these cards or just play the game in general, just remember it's only a game. Be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And when you do inevitably pick up some of these Secrets of Strixhaven cards, because have you seen the Mystical Archives? You're going to need sleeves. Make sure to buy the best sleeves. I know we both use Sentry sleeves, and you can use the promo code EBAM5 to get a discount.